demonstrations and attendant deaths and injuries from police actions. From your records, say since the beginning of this year, up now, how many Kenyans have lost their lives from police bullets and or truncheons? And I want to tell you, very honest with you, at the last count, we had 73 lost lives. And now speaking as Azimio, you can dispute or confirm. But from your end, because you are financed by taxpayers to do exactly that, how many lives of Kenyans were lost from police brutality during the demonstrations? And how many cases have you documented of those who had injuries? Many of them are still in hospital as we speak. And if you really care, I could share with you privately outside this forum the details. It's a serious matter, I'm sure you know. Yes. I'm happy my friend Osan Omar is in agreement with that, with me on that here. Now, you have said that you are handicapped. You know, at one point I felt very sorry for you people. When the IG of police referred to you as busybodies. You see? The current one referred to you people as busybodies. Of course, you responded meekly. No. As people who have got no teeth. But even as you lament lack of prosecutorial powers, have you cared to understand that you can institute private prosecution? And you have got lawyers here in your midst. I can see veteran lawyer, this. Yes. Yeah, all lawyers, very eminent lawyers. And eminent thinkers like my friend Dr. Ogon. Okay? Why haven't you taken steps? Because desperate times call for desperate measures. Extraordinary times require that you adopt extraordinary measures. Because if you did that, and eventually the prosecution is stopped, which obviously would happen sometimes, then the public would have taken note. Yeah, how the kind of resolve you have. So I'm just trying to plead with you that even as you seek to be entrenched, to be empowered, to be strengthened, can you do what you need to do with the current powers that you have? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Co-Chairs. I think just picking up from where Honorable Ndai left, it came from you that indeed some of the officers have been partisan, particularly during elections. But even in the recent demonstrations, Maandamano, it was very, very clear that some of the officers are partisan. You could see officers saying, we have allowed these demonstrations to go on, we have banned those demonstrations, we will not allow those demonstrations. And Article 37 of our Constitution is very clear. That right, the freedom to demonstrate, the freedom to protest, to picket, is guaranteed by our Constitution. It does not depend on the generosity of Bungei in Nairobi or IG Kome. But you could see these officers actually purporting to allow or disallow. And some demonstrations were very violently handled. Some of us in this dialogue committee were victims. Some of us lost very close friends. Some of us lost our bodyguards, who are actually not just brutalized, injured, but some were shot and killed by police officers. And you could tell that that partisanship was very evident. They couldn't allow demonstrations here in Nairobi, But when we have issues of some money being stolen for students going to Finland, demonstrations were allowed in Eldoret. When there would be tea machines in Kericho being brought and the citizens came out to demonstrate, demonstrations were allowed. But in Kisumu, in certain parts of Western, in Nairobi, the violence, the brutality of the police was shocking. Now that you yourselves admit this partisanship, we want to hear from you. What have you done to address this issue? Because it's a growing menace to enjoyment of fundamental rights and freedoms in our Constitution, particularly Article 37. And it also goes against what you have yourselves told us in Article 244 that requires the highest standards of professionalism and discipline in our officers. Partisanship shows lack of professionalism. It also shows the probably the lack of proper training, because you have said one of the issues there you look at is the training of our officers under Article 244D to the highest, in fact not high standards, the highest standards of competence, integrity, respect for human rights, and fundamental freedoms and dignity. So these are issues we would like you to address us on. But having witnessed firsthand the brutality and abuse of human rights by our police officers, I want to ask you if you are aware that we have about 1,000 police officers from Kenya who will be dispatched to Haiti, and there's an uproar internationally because of the recent abuse of human rights by our police. The world is worried that these police officers who abuse human rights here in Kenya might export that police brutality, abuse of human rights in Haiti and on the international stage where they are now being sent. Are you aware that this decision has been made? Will IPOB be involved, or have you been prepared to extend that oversight to our officers who will be going to Haiti if they are going to export the same police brutality outside our borders, which will reflect very seriously on our image internationally? We want you to address us on that, because what we know or what we've heard about Haiti, they are not the stone throwing demonstrations that maybe you might have been told about. These are gangs that are heavily armed. These are gangs that have killed their own leaders. And we are sending our young people in uniform, in harm's way, to face these gangs. Many of them may not come back alive. Are you aware of this development? Will you be oversighting this? We would like you to address us on that. Lastly, you have said you received over 437 complaints. I think that was from the last elections. Would like to know how many have you concluded, which ones are still how many are still under investigations out of those 437. Would also like to know, in the post-election period, that is in the Maandamano period, how many complaints have you received? And in the face of the serious police brutality witnessed in this country, and I want to confirm what the Honorable Pio and I has said, because as principals of Azimio, We have been working with these families. We have buried their dead. We have visited hospitals. And we have witnessed firsthand that those 73 Kenyans, many of them were very young, between 18 and 25, the oldest was about 30. Post-mortem reports were available to us, showing they were shot by the police, and the cause of death were gunshot wounds, many of them to the backs of their heads, many of them in their backs. We would like you to tell us whether you have received these complaints, whether you have visited some of these mortuaries in Kisumu and other parts of this country, in Nairobi, and whether you are aware of these killings by a special unit of our police. We would like you to confirm that, whether you are aware of a team of police in Subarus that are called Special Support Units, SSU, and whether you are also, as per your mandate, oversighting this killer squad of a special police unit. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, Eugene and I today decided we are the people who speak the longest, so we manage you as you manage me. Obilianga?
Thank you, Chair. I think I'll be rather brief compared to the previous speaker. I'm normally brief. I'll go straight onto the 2/3 gender rule and your input as IPOA. First of all, I want to appreciate that you have made your presentations very clearly on that. But again, underscore the fact that you are actually, the police force is really suffering from the 2/3 gender balance. Looking at the numbers you have mentioned, 10,000, 14,000 against the 200,000 or how many thousands of police. What have you done as a sector? Or what do you recommend in order to cover up this? I have seen during recruitments the bias that is there, especially on the girl child. It's like you allocate very few numbers for the girls, and yet they have equal opportunity in this country. Why hasn't it actually brought up a formula? Like we're trying to sit here and bring up a formula on how to cater for the 2/3 gender rule and let it also flow across the police, especially on the girl child. Secondly, you also mentioned on something on the professionalism, I think of the IPOA board or IPOA, whatever, generally. You said 3/4 of the composition is actually officers. Why haven't you not put up a recommendation on other professionals to be included?
National Police Service.
The National Police
Service Commission.
Service Commission to be included apart from just officers and maybe the few other professionals that you have. Why can't we have a scenario where you cut across all sections? We have the professionals like the lawyers, even teachers, stuff like that. And finally, I get back to the demonstrations. During the demonstrations, people's properties were destroyed, businesses were devastated, and the police did very little actually to protect these groups. I can't say it was only in Azimio regions. Everybody was affected across the board. Kenya Kwanza sections were affected, Azimio regions were affected. So generally, what did you do or what do you recommend that can be done? Or have you done even anything about it in the first place? Thank you.
Amina.
Thank you, Chair. My first question will be on the statements that were made by the Inspector General, Koome. He denied about the police brutality during the protests. He even went ahead to assert that Azimio la Umoja is hiring dead bodies and trying to paint a bad picture to the government and towards the police force. So as IPOA, did you investigate into this matter? Did you find out whether these people were dead? Were they really hired? Or were they really killed? So what's your take on that? Question number 2, we have also noticed as Kenyans that there is the raiding and sometimes kidnapping of certain high-profile individuals in broad daylight. IPOA, do you have anything to say about that? Thank you.
And now to just make my comments. But one of the reasons I really want IPOA to work is, you remember I was a commissioner in KCHR. And I remember walking into the late Saitoti's office and asking him to ensure that there's a policing oversight authority. In fact, this bill, the draft came actually from the Commission on Human Rights. I used to do policing oversight within the security sector reforms program, and I realized the scale and magnitude. So my first question to you, Anne, 10 years on, what are the deficiencies? Because definitely there are deficiencies, particularly within the Act. The anchorage in law or in the Constitution is one. We try to find place for IPOA within Article 59 of the Constitution so that we can create, upload, because it says that through that you can create more than one commission. But I think we were not able to necessarily locate it within the Article 59 commissions. I do agree, but what else do you think needs to be done in terms of legal reforms of the IPOA Act to upscale it to that extent where it is effective? 2, the president came on the promise that there will be no extrajudicial killings. And I do still believe that that is the position. There